Hello, and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis. I forgot my Varonis hat today, but I do work there. And today I'm going to be taking your ethical hacking questions, as well as talking about some of the things that I've been working on this week. One of those things being LoRa. No, not your eccentric aunt or someone else you know. This is a long-range form of transmission that I've been interested in a long time. And this week I started playing with it to the point that I'm pretty sure I've been able to get it to send as far as the version I'm using can go, which was actually not that impressive. So LoRa says that it can transmit up to like 3 or 4 miles in some cases. However, mine, which I am admittedly using an antenna that I fashioned myself, only got about 1/4 of a mile before it petered out, which is still better than Wi-Fi. But I'm going to be trying a new module this week, which I'm really excited about, that actually allows you to access it from a computer. You can just kind of send it serial commands. So I've got a lot to share about that. And then, of course, I got this little guy as well. This was abandoned at a local Goodwill, and the lamp on the bottom, somebody bought it by itself and then left this cute little guy behind. So I also found a 3D printed version of the base for this. I think that from now on, my Lightbox class that I've been teaching is going to turn into just how to make one of these because they are a lot cuter and I like them a lot. So yeah, so we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. But of course, hello to James. Hello to other James. Hello to all Jameses and Kurt's and everybody else in the chat. Starting a little bit later today because I'm about to get a root canal. So that's been fun. But the ibuprofen has kicked in. So let's go and talk about some of the things that I have done this week. So first off, I'm trying to use my Mastodon profile more. If you try to go to infosec.exchange, you might accidentally, like make a typo, and there are some typo squatters out there, so be careful. This one, fortunately, is just talking about their personal projects, which is fine. But typically, if you misspell a domain, you'll get a malicious typo squatter. It's funny that this is a Mastodon instance for infosec people. So not only did somebody buy that domain because they thought it'd be funny, they also put something up on it. So be aware. Yes. So I just throwing it out there. If anybody in the universe knows where to get these by themselves, just the silicone diffusers for these, making these nugget based smart lights has been really, really fun. I enjoy these so much more than I do the other diffusers I've had access to. And I've seen a lot of these at the C3 conference. And I was just like, okay, I want this cat. It is adorable. So this used to be an emoji on Yahoo Messenger, and it's kind of just morphed into its own character. And I was able to find all these lights for babies that I might just have to just discard the lower half. Maybe I'll leave them at Goodwill. There seems to be a market for just the lower half of these. But either way, I am in the market for more of these little silicone cats. They are the cutest, and I want to start teaching how to make a WLED style class, where we just take a simple microcontroller and then a diffuser and 3D print a base. I think this is going to be the class from now on because it is my favorite. So aside from resurrecting this guy and putting out a renewed plea for help, I also salvaged one of these smart router rebooters. So this is kind of cool. I also put together a little guide for oh yeah, it is Pusheen. Thank you very much. I was blocking on his name and I didn't want to guess, but yes, that is who this is. It is a Pusheen diffuser, and it's silicone, it's soft, it's made for babies, but you can upgrade it. So the original version of this little Pusheen, I'll go back up. Thank you, by the way, for reminding me. I was blocking, it was driving me crazy. So the original Pusheen, when you squeeze it or shake it, it changes colors. So what I did was just take out, the base wasn't available, so I 3D printed a new base and then upgraded it so that it uses WLED. So now it's Wi-Fi connected, I can control it remotely. And I can have it do all sorts of animations and stuff. So it's a smart Pusheen, one might call it. So making your own smart Pusheen, I think, is going to be something that I want to do. James says, oh yeah, it looks similar to the nugget. Well, if you look carefully, there's a nugget inside the Pusheen, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. I just thought it was cute that the big cat was being controlled by just a smaller cat on the inside, kind of Wizard of Oz style. So yes, this is my Pusheen project. I'm very proud of it. And in the version that I'll probably end up doing for like libraries and stuff, I just want to order like literally hundreds of these Pushins and then have the library like 3D print the base and then teach people how to take like a D1 mini and this LED ring. And together those cost like less than $3. So I'll be able to make these like really cheap for doing like low cost or like free classes. But yeah, I love them. So if you know where to find Pushin, please let me know. Yes, pay no attention to the cat behind the curtain. There's always a nugget behind it. All right. So also speaking of nuggets, I wanted to repurpose this smart router rebooter that I found. So I got this when I was at Goodwill, and it just says model MK112, and then some information about it. It's got a max load of 10 amps, which is pretty good. And it's obviously smart. Like that's like, it's got like a little indicator like, okay, obviously this is some sort of like smart on off switch, but it's not. It only reboots. So I was hoping that this would be like, I could turn like a light on and off. And I sort of can. I just should have been more specific about that desire. Because it can do that, but then that light will turn right back on again after like a minute or so. So what this is designed to do is turn off a router for whatever the specified amount of time for rebooting a router is, and then wait for it to be ready to reboot and then power itself back on. So admittedly, like not 100% what I wanted, but still it's kind of cool. So I wanted to use a S2 nugget or a USB nugget to connect to the Wi-Fi and then send a web request to do this. So I went on this whole adventure, and I want to show you what the end result is. One question is, where do I teach my classes? So I have a meetup group called Cyber Weapons Lab. I think it might still be called Cyber Weapons Lab LA, but it's for events in live events in Los Angeles, Montana, and a couple other places. But in that group, I also do online workshops too. So there are some classes that I teach that are completely online that anybody can join. And you can check out both the Null Space Labs group, as James pointed out, or also the Cyber Weapons Lab LA group is where I usually post those classes. All right, so quick little demo of this guy working. Here we go. So press the button and you can see it instantly powers itself off, and it stays off for a little bit, and then eventually it will turn back on. So kind of I think I just have it say reboot router, press the down button. So this is a very, very simple CircuitPython program that is designed to, oh, where did everyone go? There we are. That is designed to make it so that I can control a specific IoT device with a nugget, or basically create a remote for any IoT device. So I went ahead and I wrote this up. And where did I write it up at? Here we go. Oh yeah, and here's my little script. So if you want to know how to use CircuitPython to control IoT devices, I wrote up the entire process of doing it here. Like looking it up, finding out what it was, and then really the key to this working also was on the little Keep Connect menu that it gives you when you first plug it in. You can set a static IP address. So that really is what makes my script work. If it kept like picking a different IP address, this would be a lot harder to do. So currently, I have this set to a specific IP address, and then I just wrote a little bit of code to send the correct post request. So I actually was trying to use OWASP SAP, which I know I've talked about how much I love OWASP SAP a number of times before, but I got a bunch of like super confusing errors that I haven't gotten before. It was like complaining about like variable length return headers, and like nothing was really fixing it. So I was like, okay, this is stupid. So I just asked ChatGPT, and it found the official documentation and came up with this string that is basically a request I can send. But it did also note that I needed to include the password that I had set on the device. And that was like, password 123 or something. So I was like, okay, now I know what I need to do. If you just take this request and type it into an address bar, it just comes up as forbidden. So that's obviously not going to work. But instead, I remembered this program called Postman. Do these open? Ugh, they should open, but they don't. This program called Postman that allowed me to craft a request, like a post request, and then include the password as one of the values that was sent along. So once I sent a post request instead of a get request, and included the password value, I was able to get this thing to correctly cycle the switch. So I used some examples of my own like code to create a new version that sends a web request anytime the down button is pressed. It needs a couple extra libraries, which you can grab from the CircuitPython bundle. And I used CircuitPython 9 for this. So that is why that is the specific version of Python that works in a confirmed fashion. So I also went through the process of creating like a settings.toml file. And this is something that keeps your actual credentials separate from the rest of your code so that if you commit your code or share it like I'm trying to, you don't end up sending your home Wi-Fi network and password along with it. But the overall code is pretty simple. I have it on GitHub right here linked. So if you want to try it out yourself, you can just import those libraries from that I mentioned there from the CircuitPython bundle, and then this will just work, provided that you update the settings.toml file with the IP address of your device. If you have the same brand of device, you will be able to successfully trigger a reset. And this kind of technique of just crafting a web request is relatively easy. It's not very hard to do. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, yeah, I think that is not hard to do. James asked us, do Nuggets have an MQTT library yet? Yes. So the Nugget supports CircuitPython, and CircuitPython and also Arduino, and both of those can play with MQTT. So there are functional libraries available for both. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to LoRa. So this is the Wikipedia entry on LoRa. It's LoRa from long range, and basically the whole thing with LoRa is that it's found a way to do some clever transmitting that allows it to send data over a very long distance, but the trade-off is how much information it can send. So it can either be like really, really easy to pick up, or it can send like a decent amount of data. And it's either one end of the spectrum or the other. So the more data you're sending, the less likely it is for the other side to be able to correctly receive it at extreme range, and vice versa. So that's kind of the trade-off with LoRa always. So that's why when you're creating something with LoRa, you can directly impact the way that your system works by choosing like short codes or other commands that you're sending back and forth, rather than like full-fledged telemetry. So it's not exactly designed for like sending large amounts of data quickly. That's not really what it does, but it is designed for being able to send small amounts of data over a very far range. So getting into LoRa used to be pretty difficult. You needed to, get a board or something that was like $20, $30, $40, $50. And even the cheapest boards were like $20. So I've been interested in this in a really long time. And I wanted to actually give it a try myself. So I decided to get a couple of different boards and report back to you about which ones are working and how they work. So you can't really see them, but I have two different devices on my desk currently. Here's one of them. Let me turn off the screen for a second. And this is the first LoRa board that I got plugged into a USB nugget. And the USB nugget is basically controlling and interpreting signals from the LoRa board. This is the cheapest LoRa board I could find. And as you can see, it's turning red. And every time it turns red, it's actually receiving a LoRa signal from, well, honestly, like 3 feet away on the other side of the table. So this was my first attempt at hooking up a LoRa board to an existing microcontroller and just using it. And this board is available for, I think, around like $5 or so. You can get it as cheap as like $3 on AliExpress. From the United States, it's a little bit more. It's maybe around like $20 for a pair of them, which is quite expensive for a microcontroller. But you can find them online, and these are the cheapest ones. So let me go through these ones first. So when we're talking about different LoRa boards, this one uses an SPI connection in order to interface with the chip, and then it can send and receive messages and everything's good. So if we're using like Arduino for this, then there's actually a really excellent guide already out here, and that is Random Nerd Tutorials. So when I was working at Nullbyte, really the only other publication that I had a lot of respect for was Random Nerd Tutorials. Like they do really, really excellent guides. They cover a lot of stuff that is directly applicable to my interests. and they're just really, really high quality with the instructions that they give. So the first board that I got was not this one. That's the second one. Was this little chip right here. So this is a very small chip. It's about the size of an ESP8266 chip. So it fits like right on top of the ESP8266 on a D1 Mini. It's like the size of a postage stamp for those of us who don't play around with microcontrollers. So that is a good amount smaller than most people expect. And this is actually, it has what are called castellated edges. So these little like cut in edges are designed to be soldered on top of a larger board. Whoa, my computer's about to turn off? Why? All right, give me a second, gang, to find out why I'm about to lose my Mac. Okay, there we go. Scary. So as a result, working with these boards directly is kind of a pain. You can't just plug them into a breadboard. As people on the Amazon listing said over and over and over, these are not breadboard friendly. So the reason for that is the pin spacing is quite odd. It's very, very close together. And it's the same pin spacing on like a ESP8266 module that's being soldered onto a D1 Mini. Because again, this is like a daughter board. It's designed to be soldered onto a different board. All right, we've got 6% battery and holding for now. We'll see how this goes. So I basically followed this guide from Random Nerd Tutorials, starting with how do you get around the issue of whoa, let's keep going. How do we get around the issue of these boards connecting properly? So there we go. So we can see from this photo that they are not the right size to fit on standardized pin headers. And you can either break off these pin headers one by one and solder them on, which is a little odd. It does work, but it's a little strange. Or you can solder them like this. So I have a bunch of these long female pin headers available, and just bending them a little bit to fit inside the holes was a stroke of genius. So I have to say, like, I really enjoy the solution. That's exactly how I ended up doing it. I actually flipped the board over so that the silkscreen side was exposed, so I could see what pin was what, which I found to be a much better solution. But I like the enthusiasm. Like, I think that this is generally a really good solution. And if you're working with this little module to do long range stuff, then I recommend that you do it in a way similar to this. I will say my antenna is pathetic. I think it might be the antenna that's the problem. The wire length depends on the frequency. So for me, I'm broadcasting at 915 megahertz, which is 3.22 inches. I thought I cut this relatively precisely, but as I said, I was getting a really, really bad kind of connection. So yeah, I'm not really 100% sure that this was what I was supposed to do in terms of like the correct length. So once you have one of these boards connected to a breadboard, I went ahead and used a breadboard breakout by Aria. So where'd my nugget go? Here. I wonder if I just have one sitting around. No, I guess I don't. So these breadboard breakouts made it so that I could plug my nugget directly into the pins like really easily. I'll go ahead and turn this off for a second so I can just hold it up. So this is basically a little board that plugs into the back of the nugget and then sticks out onto the breadboard so I can wire everything up. And there is just enough room on this mini breadboard to wire everything together. So I actually just did a write-up and shared my code for this. And I made a couple different prototypes, and I want to talk about what they do. So the first prototype that I made, and I think that I have this on... I really like this picture of the nugget also with like my two cats like very clearly fighting behind them. Here we go. So my very first prototype was just something that would change the NeoPixel color every time it received a message. So in this case, I believe every time it turns red, yep, there we go. It's receiving the message. And that was pretty simple. So then because the nugget also has a screen, I decided I also wanted to print out the message that was received onto the screen on both devices. So both the transmitter and the receiver should both like turn on, output a message on the screen, and then send. So I went ahead and made those, and I made two versions as well. So where did I put them is the question. I'm sure. Oh yeah. So I just published this repo just before the show, and it's also part of the reason why I was a little bit late. So I have all of the different code that I used here, and one of the prototypes that I made was a automated transmitter. So that's what's currently running right now, and it is basically sending a hello with a increment number over and over and over. Now, what is this useful for? Well, for me, it's very useful for being able to determine the range. So I can travel a distance and I can see which one of these were received and if there were any messages missed in the sequence that I'm expecting. So this kind of just like general repeater is an easy way of sending data at a static interval and then recording the signal strength on the other side to see like when I'm starting to reach the end of my range. So I'm using, well, there we go. I am using serialterminal.com in order to connect to both of these nuggets live on the show. And from serialterminal.com, I clicked on connect and then I connected to the transmitter and I can see that I'm sending packets. And the whole time that I've been on the show, this has been sending this has been sending these automated beacons and then having them received on the other side. So the code side of this looks like sending packet, and then it appends the counter number, and then hello. It sends them, and then it turns off the NeoPixel and goes around and does it all over again. So pretty simple loop here. It's just sending the same packet over and over. And on the receiver side, over here, I have the receiver is also connected to my computer via serialterminal.com. And I can see that it is receiving all these packets. And generally, the signal strength is like a lower number is better. So -50. I bet if I move this over closer to the transmitter, I could get that to go down even. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to move this over so it's right next to the transmitter. And let's see if the next packet is closer. Yes, it is closer. Okay, cool. So we can see that moving the transmitter has a effect on the actual signal strength that we're observing. And that's pretty consistent. So that's cool. So we can use this again to see all sorts of things, like especially being able to detect like when we're about to go out of range. I was seeing like garbled messages also, and sending along the hello is nice because towards the end of the range of this thing, which is about 1/4 of a mile in the current setup, not super impressive. I was just getting like garbled packets, and the hello was just a string of like weird characters. So kind of interesting there. Let's see. I'm also sorry. I lost you guys for a second. I wasn't looking at the chat. So Magic Robot says that Meshtastic is blowing up my feed these days. Yeah. So I took a look at porting over Meshtastic because I really wanted to try implementing it. And it seems like it in most cases needs an ESP32S3, which I do have a couple nuggets to do that, but it's not like the main one we're making right now. But if you do have the ESP32S3, then you can create a Bluetooth link and like send messages over it. And you can basically link your phone to the microcontroller and then have the LoRa device act as a repeater. There's all sorts of cool stuff around this as well. Like on the Random Nerd tutorial site, they went way more into depth about like LoRa and how it works and like different network structures. So you can send like point-to-point communication, which is what we're currently doing, but you can also create a network. And that's like the Meshtastic project is basically doing this and being able to send information to devices all across the network with certain rules to prevent like traffic flooding or like other problems that mesh networks tend to face. So yeah, Meshtastic seems really cool. And if you are interested in LoRa, there's a number of different devices that support Meshtastic out of the box. I don't necessarily recommend trying to port it over because it seems pretty complicated, but some of the devices that do support it are really, really cool. What is the link server? What is the link for my Discord server? If you go to nugget.dev, nugget.dev, that's currently the best place to find the Discord server. It's linked on the social links. Usually we used a different one, but it keeps getting reported for spam because I didn't send up like I didn't set up a email security like anti-spoofing policy on it because I just didn't get around to it. So yeah, that one is currently down. But if you go to nugget.dev, that one is not down. I need to check the resistive load for the antenna. Yeah, I think that honestly, I'm also transmitting at the default default dBi, and I can bump that up to a limit that's a little bit higher, but still legal in my area. So I'm going to give that a try as well, because I think I might just be like outputting at the default. What is the most evil thing I've ever done? That is not a question I'm willing to fully answer on the stream, but I will say I really like it when co-working spaces connect entertainment systems to like the same network that they like allow people to work off of. I remember I was a member of a co-working space where like late at night, like I would start like changing the Spotify playlist, and like the Sonos speakers were like particularly like wide open back then. So being able to like slowly start changing like the Sonos playlist, like without the owners knowing, until it became like very, very specific. I really appreciated that. I don't think that many people would consider that to be super evil, but I know that some of the people at the like space did not appreciate it, and did not like my taste in music. What laptop do I use? So currently I split my work between a ThinkPad, which is just like a random garbage ThinkPad off of eBay that doesn't work all the way. Like the mouse buttons on it are broken, and a MacBook Pro, which my work purchased. So the trade-off is like I tend to do all my experimental work on the ThinkPad, and I tend to do all my production work on MacBook Pro, because one is terrible for one is terrible at the other. So that's kind of my split. One question, how do you locate a role that fits your personality in cyber? So there's a lot of different roles that are about people. And I would say that if you are someone who's comfortable talking to people, if you're comfortable presenting, those are things that are very rare in cybersecurity. And being kind of on like the business side where you're explaining things, you're breaking it down to customers, you're explaining incidents to customers, or like you are like a forward facing part of the company, like those roles tend to pay like really well. So depending on what your type of personality is, you can focus on things that are comfortable for you. If it's solving puzzles without a lot of contact or interference from other people, there's definitely roles like managing incident response, or like reversing malware or things like that that might be more interesting to someone. Whereas if you're on the forward-facing side and you really like talking to people, there's things like negotiating new deals, or explaining the fallout from incidents, or like kind of I guess like doing education like I do. Like those are roles that might be better suited to your particular personality. So I would say like a lot of cybersecurity is actually dealing with people, and ironically, the majority of people in cybersecurity are not necessarily good at dealing with people unless they're like tricking them on like a phishing engagement. So if you're comfortable dealing with people, that's definitely a plus. And if you bring other skills from prior careers, like for example, a lot of the people on my team have prior experience with like media. So that could be like creating media, shooting video. Like I myself used to be a photographer, so that's why I know about like lighting. Those skills make it easier for me to do projects where the normal person would have to hire like a bunch of people to pull it off. So those sorts of roles also will help. Yeah, I would really say that the people thing though is like the biggest thing that I've learned about cyber is like the more that you can deal with people and the better you are at dealing with people, both peers, customers, like higher ups, like everything, the easier things in general will be for you. I have a question about the specific piece of hardware. Its frequency range is 300 to 348 megahertz. Okay, that's cool. I don't see a question in that, but I also have never heard of that piece of hardware before. Have I made any custom GPTs? So ChatGPT now has the feature of allowing you to make a custom GPT with its own set of instructions that makes it so that you can do certain things. An example would be Angelina set up a GPT that was able to either decode payloads or write payloads depending on what you wanted. And usually this was like this big back and forth where like, ChatGPT would tell you, oh, like make sure to only use this for ethical reasons. And Angelina's is more useful because it cuts out the conversation. It basically sets the context for what you're trying to do. And that sort of like prompt engineering is what's making some of these GPTs more useful, because maybe they'll already have a set of information that allows them to be better at doing what you're asking it to do. So I myself have not personally done that, but that's what they are. I've used a couple OSINT ones and I found them to be adequate, but I I know how to ask the thing for what I want anyway. So like, telling it to look online and doing other things like, those are all things I expect to do because I just use it so often. But some of them have been useful. I don't see any of them as really revolutionary, but And there's also so many of them already. It's kind of like just looking at them. I typed in OSINT and there was like 25 different ones to pick from. And I was like, okay. And they all kind of like look the same. They seem to behave the same. The data sharing policy is not totally clear. So I have not made any, but I have tried some and I was not super impressed yet. I do not know how to adjust that particular device via code. If you love, what if you love both people and digging deep? Then you should go into investigations. But I find that my curiosity for digging deep led me down the path of OSINT and open source intelligence. So, and because I'm also not afraid to talk to people, that means that when I do an investigation, I'm not afraid to like call someone on the phone, like if I really need to. So, yeah, I have to say, like, it's definitely a skill that you can use in a variety of different things. And if you like being both technical and explaining things to people, that puts you in a pretty good position, because it means you can kind of work as like a project manager where you can explain the results of the team, maybe represent people who don't like speak up for themselves or speak well for themselves all the time. It's like a nice role to be in where you can understand what the basic work that needs to be done is, help plan for things with the knowledge of how much time or energy or effort something takes, and then also be able to explain things or like market it a little bit to the people who decide who gets money. So, I mean, yeah, if you have both of those skills, it's kind of nice, frankly, because you can advocate for teams of people who may just want to, be alone with their code or have a lot of other things going on and don't have time to like come and like advocate for the projects that you're working on. Speaking of people, where did Alex go? So Alex has been working on a number of different prototypes and also talking at conferences. He no longer lives in the frozen north. So he is down in California now doing his own thing. And you can follow him at alexlin.com and I think linlabs.com as well. He's also on Twitter. I believe he's on Mastodon. So all of his stuff is up there. And he's been working on a number of war driving and then like a covert like GPS tracker thing that like was part of a video that we did for Hack 5, which I think has been taken down, which truly sucks because it was one of my favorite videos of all time. But in that video, we had a friend named Irish, and each one of us in the video came up with a different way of tracking Irish and trying to figure out where Irish was. And Alex's idea was to create like a little passive GPS logger that logged the location of nearby wireless networks and then uploaded them via open networks with like a DNS request, which was really cool. So that system actually worked. And then after the video, he went off and made like his own open source version of that. So yeah, like he's off doing cool stuff. Like he still goes to conferences. You can find him online, and he still, I think he still like teaches workshops at those conferences. So yeah, if you're interested, you can find him still doing lots of cool stuff, especially in like the Southern California area, because I live in Montana. So let's see. I have multiple laptops. Is that normal for this field? Yes, I also have multiple laptops. The laptop thing is mostly because there's no perfect solution. No matter what people say, like a MacBook Pro sucks for doing some particular Linux things. Like a ThinkPad sucks for doing like Adobe stuff, like especially if it's running Linux. It's just really hard to get a good everything laptop. And also, frankly, it is a good idea to separate some activities onto a different computer. And I find that also like my ThinkPad I use for microcontroller stuff because I have broken my installation of Arduino like irreparably on this computer, and I just don't have time on my MacBook to fix it. So I'm like, okay, everything for the mic, like that's now the microcontroller computer. So I think like compatibility is one thing where some hardware setups are just better than others for doing certain tasks, like microcontrollers. My ThinkPad installation seems to be a lot more stable when it comes to doing that, even though this has worked for a while. It's just I can't fix it. I don't know why. And then also, I would say like being able to run other operating systems, like Macs are great. Everybody loves to use them until you have to do something custom or weird. And that's when like a throwaway ThinkPad is generally the route that a lot of people go. Oh my gosh, a lot of people are talking about flippers. So I don't know if you saw, but one of our previous guests made another video. So where is it? I think I can find it. So Katspazio, who was on our stream not long ago, went ahead and made a video about something new. Let's see. Okay, here we go. I'm going to turn this back on. I'm also going to stop putting that message down there. All right. So this is the channel, and I saw a new video come out, I believe. Or did I? Maybe it's... yes, here we go. So it's a new short. So I just wanted to shout this out. In general, like all of these cool like mods for using Bluetooth on the Nugget have kind of like taken me by surprise. Like I knew that the ESP32S3 was going to be a cool thing to add. I knew that that would give me the capability of, for example, like creating an app that would connect to the Nugget and run attacks automatically. But what I didn't expect was that, just by selling them as a kit, so many people would start just like running with them and like doing cool things. So this was from a kit that I gave just because like it seemed like I should support people making cool things. And already Katspazio has created a spoofer for the Apple Vision Pro, which is funny, but also a flipper detector. So we talked a little bit on the show about how you would catch somebody doing these like Bluetooth spam attacks on a flipper. And one way was narrowing down both first the presence of the attack and then the signal strength of the packets that are coming in from the attack. So if there's a single person using a flipper to do this attack, that means that you would be able to turn on one of these tools and track down the flipper by signal strength, which I love. So a lot of people now are using these Bluetooth attacks. I think it's cool that there's different people who have figured out how to essentially use the Nugget platform, slap on a different microcontroller, and then be able to track down like a flipper that is misbehaving and maybe making people's iOS devices unusable. Here's a really great question. How do you accept making mistakes in the field? So there's a lot of different ways that this applies. When you are doing cybersecurity, you can make a mistake that causes like a loss. That's like something got deleted, something got destroyed. You like poked something that you shouldn't have done, or you misdiagnose something where like you see something and you make an assumption and that assumption is wrong. I would say like the biggest thing is you are always learning in cybersecurity, and there is often like it's a serious field. So like there's not a lot of room to make mistakes, but there has to be some tolerance for the fact that if you're not pushing yourself, you're not learning, and pushing yourself often involves sometimes making mistakes. So when you make a mistake like that, the number one thing is to let everyone know that you learned a lesson and not necessarily apologize. Apologies are fine, but they don't fix anything like in the field. So when I make a mistake or someone on my team makes a mistake, I often ask them to like not apologize, just learn from it and don't make the same mistake again. Because that's it. Like, especially if like, the damage is minimal, like if the damage is not minimal, then like, you obviously need to take responsibility for fixing it the best you can, or like make sure other people like, become involved. A professional mistake I made recently was accidentally discharging bear spray inside of a full library at a community college. Maybe not a cybersecurity specific mistake, but the process for atoning for it was the same. I went and found someone who was responsible for the library, told them about the accident, did my best to clean things up, and I was the last out. So it's kind of the same thing with a professional plunder in cybersecurity. Oh my gosh, we have so many messages today. Don't be sorry, be better. I mean, it's a little bit curt, but like when somebody makes a mistake and they feel terrible about it and they apologize over and over, like I don't want them to feel terrible. I just want them to learn from the mistake and make it so I don't need to worry about it happening again. If I see signs that somebody hasn't learned from a mistake as a manager, that's when I begin to get a red flag. Like if they make the same mistake over and over, I realize that like something's not computing here. But usually, you get your hand burned, you learn not to touch the stove again, like, or at least like, put on the proper protection before doing it. So that's really the biggest difference, I think, like between someone who is just apologizing over and over but continues to make mistakes versus someone who makes like a big fat mistake, but they only make it once. Is if you're only making the mistake once, then like that's that's not something you should be ashamed of. I remember when I was in community college, I had a teacher in my manufacturing industrial technology class that was in charge of like the lathe machine. And it was like a big, scary machine with like spinning metal parts. And like the safety video made it clear that it could really mess you up. And I hadn't had an opportunity to use it for like 3 weeks. So by the time it was my turn, I had forgotten a lot of the safety stuff. And I asked the instructor, I don't want to have an accident here. Like, can you teach me? And like, he made the biggest deal about it. He's just like, you've been in this class for this long and you don't know how to do it. Like, you know, it's like, are you serious? And tried to make me feel bad for like not knowing the information, but it was a safety thing, you know, like he tried to make it me feel like I made like a big mistake by asking, or that like it was my responsibility to, you know, like do it myself. But I stuck to it, and I kind of like insisted that like I wasn't going to use something that I didn't feel comfortable doing, and that like I needed to learn how to do it before proceeding. And that's kind of the same thing. Like if someone blows up at you, if someone like makes you feel bad for making a mistake, like I was like, one of my lines was, I was like, don't beat yourself up. Like, you know, I know that I'm your student and that me not knowing how to do this reflects, you know, on how you taught it to me. But together we need to get to the point that I feel comfortable doing this for everyone's safety. You know, so that was kind of my attitude. If someone like blows up at you and gets upset at you for making a mistake or for asking for more information or whatever, like, you know, like it's in most cases, it's their job to make sure that you know what you need to know to do it. So I would just say like there are some gatekeepers in these processes, and I myself, like I advocate for myself pretty well, but I've still been shut down even when I'm like, okay, I'm about to make a mistake here. Like I need to seek some guidance on this to make sure I know, and then getting like negative like backlash from that. I wouldn't let it bother you. Like it's obviously intimidating when you're new to a field, but like as you get older, you start to realize that like those sorts of people like are dodging responsibility, and like ultimately you have to hold them at least a little bit accountable. All right, that was a lot. So let me know you didn't miss all of the LoRa goodness, because I'm still going to talk a little bit about what my other programs do. So let's refer to my GitHub. I'm going to go back over here and talk about what exactly you can do with this. So I have my 2 different programs running here, continuing to send LoRa packets, continuing to receive LoRa packets, which is great. There we go. We just got another one. And if you want to replicate this yourself, you can do it on a Nugget. The only thing is you have to wire it basically exactly the same. So I showed off my first program, and this is just the automated beacon transmitter. But my second program is the LoRa serial transmitter. So this program is a little bit different. And what it does is, again, it defines custom SPI pins. So you have to wire it the same way that I did here. But provided that you have it hooked up to the same pins, then this will actually wait for a serial, like a string to be sent over a serial, and then it will send that string as the message. So I tested this with some pretty long messages, and it sent the whole thing. So the Arduino version of this seems to be pretty friendly for sending like relatively long messages, but this basically makes it like a long-term, or a long distance messenger where you can message other LoRa nodes with a relatively long text message. So I tested this, and it works really well, with the exception of the fact that the range isn't ideal. So for this RFM 95 chip, which again is super, super cheap and highly recommend checking out if you're interested in LoRa, you'll need to do the random nerd tutorial like way of soldering it onto these long female pin headers, because I think that it works really well. And then you'll need a microcontroller to connect it to. So I'm using a USB nugget, and it works perfectly fine with that. I'm using those Arduino sketches to get those across. So that is the first chip that I talked about today. This chip, again, you can get on AliExpress for like $3 to $4. From Amazon, it costs a little bit more, but you'll need a pair of these, and they work pretty simply. You'll find my examples here, and if you have a USB nugget and one of these, then you can just flash my code directly. So I included bin files that allow you to just take this over to the nugget.dev website, and you can flash this directly over and start working off of these examples. So what else is out there? Well, the other thing that I'm really interested in is these RYLR 998. So these are cut in the shape of a dove, which it has been said multiple times is to promote, oh yes, designed in the shape of a dove. This symbolizes that what it conveys is not just LoRa signal, but love and peace. I have to say, I appreciate the design aesthetic. I think it's really cool. So in this case, this board has like a serial connection. So if I am using like a serial TTL breakout, then I can like plug in, or like a UART breakout, I can plug this in and communicate with it over UART. So that means a couple things. If I have a Raspberry Pi, I can connect this with the connector and interface with it. Or if I plug it into my USB nugget, I believe I can communicate with it just over serial. So I just got this today, and I'm really excited to try it out. It seems like, since it has like a legit antenna that's not just a piece of wire that I cut out, it's probably going to get a better signal strength. So I'm excited to hear about that and see whether or not it works. But the fact that I can plug this in and use basically a Linux computer with an adapter is pretty cool. I'm kind of excited about that. And I'm also going to see if maybe it's a little bit less complicated for integrating with a USB nugget. If I'm able to just connect to it over UART, then that could mean that this is something that's really easy to write code for. So it takes what are called AT commands. So I can set the channel that it's operating on. I can set the power that it's transmitting on. There's a bunch of things I can communicate to this just using a simple serial command. So yeah, I think that it's pretty easy to use, or at least it seems to be easier to use. I've also seen there's this Python script that allows me to do two-way texting using this board. So you can do a Raspberry Pi or with a PC and a USB TTL converter. It makes it pretty easy to just connect to this. So one question is, can you recommend an FTDI adapter? I don't know if they still sell these, but there was for a while the FTDI Friend by Adafruit. Yeah, this is by Adafruit. I hope that it's still available. But yeah, so the FTDI Friend is something that I have in like a USB port version. So it like has a bunch of like breakout ports already like there. But yeah, where is it? It used to be a TDI Friend with micro USB extras, like these guys. So Adafruit has a lot of really great products. Like the FTDI Friend that I have, I think is it looks like it is no longer in stock. So that's too bad. But yeah, like something like this should work just fine. I just have like a nice version that already has these wires like broken out and whatnot. But it's also not labeled very well. So that's, not great. But yeah, I would say like the Adafruit FTDI Friend is going to be what I would recommend. And I am probably going to buy one after the show. Can you use a connector and switch out the antenna based on frequency, or do you have to fine tune your hardware, or does that mess up the fidelity? I don't do a lot of radio testing because it requires a kind of a sophisticated setup to really like get a lot of information back. You can obviously try like cutting the antenna in different ways and coiling it and supporting it and whatever. For the one that I'm using, I'm just literally using just a wire that is not contorted in any way. It's just like roughly measured. So it's not going to be the most sophisticated version. And also goodbye, James. Glad to have you on the stream. I myself am going to be going in a couple minutes. But yeah. Also thank you to everyone who are retroactively supporting me in that confrontation with the metal shop teacher. I think that if I was a first-time student in that situation, I really would have felt too intimidated. And honestly, there were some people in the class who were really wonderful, who were like there was one person in particular, Unicole, who was an excellent student and was always willing to go first and try things out before everyone else. And this teacher made her cry by making her feel like she had broken a part of the machine that actually just like wears out on its own over time. And she went and spent her own money on like purchasing a replacement part because he made her feel like she was like making it so the rest of the class couldn't do anything, even though he had replacements available. So like, I think it was just like a grumpy teacher that was like doing a little bit of gatekeeping. But you're going to find that in various places in cybersecurity. And the people who are not cool with you making mistakes, like, are either managing critical infrastructure or gatekeepers. So just don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, especially if you're not sure how to do something. Like, speaking up about that is important. And somebody who makes you feel dumb for asking questions is like not a great mentor or like a great source of support. All right, so I think that that's just about the time we have today. I'm going to be checking back in on all this LoRa stuff, but yeah, I've been really encouraged to try out some of these things this week and be able to get such a good, quick result, even if maybe not the most ideal range. This tester is available for anybody who wants to give it a try, and I will probably make a video on this actually. So if you want to try out LoRa using a cheap board, I would consider to be like $3 to $5 to be a pretty cheap board. You can order one on AliExpress and get it delivered in not that long. So yeah, really happy that LoRa did not end up being as complicated or as difficult as I thought it might be to implement. Is there anything else I want to show off? Yeah, I was working on this for a while, still working on this. I was also calling the people on Amazon who couldn't figure out how to get this working a coward for not just like wiring it together and just giving up too early. Yeah, I think that that's just about it for this week. Aside from, of course, if you're joining us late and you have a source on these Pusheen silicone light diffusers, I've been 3D printing new bases for them and having them powered by either a Nugget or a D1 Mini, and they have been among my favorite things. So if you've got a source on these Pusheens, please let me know. All right, that is all I got this week. Thank you for hanging out and talking about LoRa. Hopefully with these little, I have this charming little dove chip right here, actually. So by next week, I'll hopefully have a little, I guess, report on how far these LoRa chips can go when they are in the shape of a bird to symbolize peace and love, instead of just my horrible kind of ramshackled together version, which is more of a symbolization of pulling, I guess, noise out of chaos, or a signal out of noise, something like that. That's all I really got. So we'll have a new prototype and more LoRa stuff next week. And hopefully we will also have Killian on at the end of the week on Friday to talk about all the cool Wi-Fi hacking and just general hacking news that happened that week. And I'll have some updates on my wireless hacking stuff as well. And per always, if you want to support the stream and show Varonis, our sponsor, that you enjoy it, you can go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. And this week, if you go to that link, you'll get a preview for something I'm going to be talking about on Friday. Varonis.com/Kody. So the security researchers at Varonis, there are more than me, have found some cool Outlook vulnerabilities. So I'm going to be talking about different ways you can leak NTLM hashes and what this means. Anytime I get to talk about research is great, because usually these are like, when they're disclosed, they're like pretty bad and hush hush and have to be like fixed like extensively, like before we're allowed to talk about them. So now that this is public, I'm going to talk a little bit about this vulnerability, and we'll go more into it on Friday. So not only can you get a little sneak peek on what we're going to talk about then, but you also support the stream every time you go to that link. So, oh yes, thank you, James. Time for my root canal. I'm actually not sure if it's happening in an hour or if it's happening early next week. It all depends on if someone cancels or not. So cross your fingers for me, because that's always fun. All right, everyone. I will see you on Friday, hopefully with a new tooth or whatever. And see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.